Welcome to Google Cloud's Global Digital Conference, Making It Work, Collaborate, Innovate, and Transform. I'm Kaitlin Ryman, Google Cloud's America's Change Lead, and I'm happy to be with you today alongside Solange Jacob, who's a change manager from Google Cloud's premier partner, Onix. If at any point during today's session you have questions, feel free to ping them in the chat, and Googlers are standing by to answer them. You can access the chat in the window just below, and you can also go there to have your technical challenges answered. Let's go ahead and get started. In today's session, we're going to review several key topics to managing a successful G Suite migration. The first of which will be an introduction to Google Cloud's customer success methodology. Then we'll have time to do a deep dive into the people, process, and technology activities that are required to make your migration a success and to make the change stick. The lessons learned today that we'll share with you are learned from many client implementations that we've done around G Suite. You can see some of the clients mentioned here on the slide, and we're looking forward to sharing those learnings with you. We've all likely heard the saying that change is hard, but for many of us, it evokes a variety of emotions. Even if change is positive, we can expect that both ourselves and those that we're trying to manage change for will experience different reactions to that. Let's talk about the 4 key archetypes that we see around emotional responses to change. The first of which is the navigator. This is the individual that you may see on the team who's really the go-getter and the individual who is empowering themselves to help solve their own problems and work through any challenges that they may see when they're going through a change process. The second key type is the critic. This one at surface level may seem like a negative influencer on a change experience because it's tiring and they may be asking a lot of questions and challenging the discussion at the table, but they are actually a positive catalyst for a change team if we can sit down and work with them on understanding their concerns, validating their perspectives, and making sure that we can activate them and engage them as part of the change planning process. The other 2 common archetypes that we see are the bystander, which may sound familiar to some of you, which is an individual who almost ignores the change. They don't acknowledge it, they keep going about their day-to-day business, and they ultimately try to pretend like the change isn't happening. The second one in that category is the victim. This is an individual who may take offense to some of the changes and may think about it in more of a negative light. And what we need to do with these last 2 types is find a way to talk about the what's in it for them and identify what is their motivation or what can we do to help inspire them and engage them and get them back into a curious mindset about the change that's happening and have them experience it in a positive light. The good news is that there's a simple change model that will help us address the change for a variety of different audiences in spite of the emotional reaction that they might have to the change. The model that we see up here in front of us was validated several years ago as we thought about what does it take to drive successful change of collaborative technologies. The first key question that we need to ask us, which is represented in the upper left-hand corner, is how does this change help employees with their day-to-day jobs, with their responsibilities, and with their career growth? And if we're able to address that through our change planning process, we'll have a much higher degree of success of making that change stick. The second key question that we need to answer for employees, which is in the upper right-hand corner, is how hard or easy is it going to be for them to adopt this change? The third key question down in the bottom left is around social influence. As human beings, we want to know, are others doing it and should we do it too? And inevitably, the more social we can make the change experience, the better off we'll be at making that change stick. And then last but not least, it's facilitating conditions. It's letting employees know that the organization is behind them and will support them both before, during, and after the implementation of G Suite. And if we're successful at doing that, we'll see good results from that change program. So in order to facilitate the right conditions for change, we really need to ensure that our project focuses not only on the technology, but it also focuses on the people and process aspects of the change. And you may think, sure, When we focus on technology, we have to make sure that the migration goes smoothly and that data is carried over in the correct format. We may think we have to communicate to people and that we have to think about some of our business processes. But if we double down and invest on each of these three equally in our change experience, we'll see that we have a much more positive response during the change experience. Our end-to-end approach that's been perfected over many customer implementations sits across 4 different phases. We affectionately refer to this as the 4E model. At the beginning of the process, we're really tasked with exciting individual employees as they look at experiencing this change. This is where we build sponsorship with senior level executives within the organization. We define the scope of what's in front of us from a change experience and how quickly are we going to move through that change experience so that we can set expectations with the workforce. We then move into the second phase, which is enablement, where we start to make the change real for the organization. We start to help them understand, how do these tools make you better, stronger, and faster in your day-to-day life? And that's really where the people and process part of the change starts to become very meaningful for making that change successful. We also, in the enable phase, will start implementing the technology, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we progress through that implementation life cycle here a little bit later on in the presentation. And then the final 2 phases are really about building upon the momentum that you've gained once the tools are in place for the workforce. And that's under expand and embed. And in expand, we could think of this as an opportunity to truly transform. We've been talking about in enablement how the tools make them better, stronger, and faster, and now it's an opportunity to make that real for the workforce. And finally, embedding. This is where we get to measure adoption and we get to see about productivity gains, and all of those things that we hoped would become real through the implementation are an opportunity for us to explore as we think about embedding. And then finally, as we think about bringing these characteristics together in these 4 different phases of work that we do, this is what the timeline looks like in totality. The excite phase is really an opportunity for us to build that sponsorship and sell to the workforce what's going to be happening with them to get them excited about the shift that they're about to make. Then over a 90-day, roughly speaking, period, we enable the workforce. And then on an ongoing basis, we continue to go back to that expand and embed as we start to learn more from the measurement activities that we would be doing, the feedback loops we might have in place, and how we can continue to improve. So with that, I'll turn it over to Solange to speak more about the people and process activities.
Thank you very much, Kaitlin. All right, fantastic. So now we're going to speak about the people side of change and what we really need to do to ensure that our people, our employees, our users at our organizations are coming along with us on this journey. So as Kaitlin discussed earlier, we do have 4 phases, the 4 E's. And what we find and what we really try to focus on are 4 particular work streams within the change management space that include sponsorship and stakeholder management, organizational analysis and change impacts, your communication planning, as well as your training planning. Now, as you can see on the screen, essentially across these 4 E's and across these 4 phases, these take on a different life as you move through the project and you move through these different phases. So for example, in the beginning, in the excite phase, as Kaitlin was referring to earlier, this is really where you are garnering your leadership, you're getting them on board, you're making sure that they are coming up with a strong coalition to really help with the sponsorship piece and to really make sure that we're marketing and providing a why and a vision to what the organization is looking to do moving forward. As you move along that timeline, however, and you move into enable, expand, and embed, your sponsorship and your stakeholder management really becomes about your middle management, those business leaders, as well as some of your peer-to-peer support that I'll speak about a little bit later on as we move through this presentation, also known as your change agents. As you're moving through and you're getting to your expand and embed phase and you're really looking at that transformation, sponsorship still plays a key part. You really want to make sure that you're promoting adoption, right? And you're keeping those champions alive and continuing to build adoption as we move through this different process. As you continue on with embed, you want to really ensure that you're still providing information to your end users. The project doesn't start on your go live date. Another work stream that we really focus on, which is also equally important, is the analysis. You really want to make sure that you're targeting and you're figuring out what audiences and users that you really have within your organization. Who are you planning this change for, right? You really want to make sure that you're addressing the impacts and how these different groups are going to be impacted as we move them through this technology change. It's really important, once again, in the excite phase, you're really figuring out your audiences, your target users. Who are we going to be communicating to? Who are we supposed to be training to? Who are we going to actually be moving and migrating data for? So we really want to make sure that we have these questions answered. And then very similarly, as you're moving through from excite to enable, now you're actually thinking about, okay, now I know who those target audiences are. I'm addressing the impact. How is this group going to be impacted versus others? For example, we usually find that finance would be one of those groups that are impacted a little bit differently than everyone else, as well as our executive admin assistants. And as you continue moving on through your expand and embed phase, of course, your analysis comes now more about where are those transformation opportunities. Now that we know who we've actually moved on to this new platform and who we've moved to G Suite, now how do we get them engaged and really figuring out how we're going to make these different departments or these different groups really successful as we move through. Of course, and last but not least, both our comms and our training plans. These are two work streams that are completely important. And really, in that excite phase, you're planning. You've figured out who your target audiences are. You're figuring out who those user groups are. And now you're really thinking, okay, well, how do I want to communicate to them? How do I want to train these users? What are their needs in comparison to other people within the organization? And so really, once again, as you're moving from excite to embed, your communication and training plan evolves. You continue to communicate and make sure that you're exciting everyone, making sure that you're providing appropriate training. A best practice of ours is that we make sure that we do training at least 1 to 2 weeks prior to each phase that goes onto the system. And that continues on as you get to the enablement phase where we're putting people onto the platform. And then, of course, as we move to expand and embed, your communication and training plan still continues, but it changes. Instead of providing action items to people about what they need to get done to move on to the system, now you're providing them with constant communications about other success stories or innovation stories, success stories across the organization. You really also want to make sure that if there are any changes or new releases that are happening on the Google platform, that you are training your users on that as well. Now, as I said, this is really a journey. Okay, and the nice thing about our G Suite projects or just moving people onto different technologies, this really could be a fun deployment. You know, a lot of people say, oh, the project's coming out of IT, what else are they going to make us do? But really, you're really wanting to make sure that to manage that change appropriately, you're really helping take your people, your employees, your end users, your colleagues on a journey. And once again, that journey goes across those 4 phases that we spoke about. You really want to start that journey with ensuring that everyone understands the why. What is the vision? Where are we going? Why are we doing this? Why are we putting our company through this? And once you start with that communication and marketing plan, as we discussed, you're really helping people say, okay, I understand what's happening. I understand the vision. Now tell me more. As you're moving them through now from that excite phase to understanding and knowing that this is happening, now we're actually putting people onto the system. And we actually do that in 3 different pilots, if you will, in our enable phase. The first pilot is usually known as Core IT, and that's usually a subset of our technical teams. Really, the purpose of that is to ensure that from a technical perspective, the migrations work as they need to, we're putting the systems online as we need to, and we're making sure that we're not missing anything so that what the company was used to before, now they're actually getting an advanced version of that as we move forward. In this Enable and Core IT phase, you do also want to make sure that you're standing up some sort of going Google Learning site. You want to make sure that your end users know where they can go and get information, and even really important communications that they probably missed that was sent either via email, or maybe they haven't been in the office for a while, so they weren't able to see all the posters and marketing that was put up around it. You do also, though, throughout these projects, because it is a more fun project, as I said earlier, you really want to make sure that you're allowing your users to volunteer and actually be a part of this project with everyone else. And we really call this phase our early adopter phase. This tends to be a voluntary group of people who are really super excited to get on the platform. They probably use Gmail in their personal lives as well. And so they're usually super savvy, ready to get on board. They really want to be champions for the change. And even those that may not be as technically savvy, they still actually really want to just be a part of the process. They really don't mind helping their colleagues when we get to go live. And this group is a super important group because, once again, this is going to act as your peer-to-peer support that's really going to help with your support calls that could be really huge, if you will, at Global Go Live, such that you don't have this in place. You really want to make sure that you have that peer-to-peer support. Not everyone is comfortable logging a ticket or picking up the phone to call the help desk. And so you really want to make sure that you have someone that person recognizes that they work with every day who actually has been on the platform about a month earlier and could really help them through some of those tough questions. As we continue through Enable, of course, we're getting to our global go live phase. We really want to make sure that you're still ensuring that your executives are making the appropriate decisions for their different groups. It's really important to have an executive steering committee that can really help move everyone through those changes and those impacts, and just ensuring that their groups are acknowledged as we're moving through these phases. Of course, as we get to the end of this journey now, at this point, everyone's already bought in, they're super excited, they know where their support lives, they know that they have assistance, and now we're getting to a point where everyone knows how to use the technology, and now it's really about thinking, how do we expand and embed this? How do we continue the adoption process? How do we keep things going? How do we help people understand how to work faster, more efficiently, and in a more meaningful way? Now, I did discuss the Google Guides and the early adopters that are volunteers from the organization. And what I really wanted to touch on here is just the importance, again, of this group. They're really meant to be your change agents. They're going to be champions for the change. And you can make this program really fun. As I said, these are colleagues of yours that are volunteering for the experience. So we really want to make sure that we're training them in advance, that you're giving them all that they need to understand the support process, how things are going to work, what is going to come across on day one, so that they can really support their peers. They're a really great group. You really want to make sure that you're treating them well, because once again, they're going to really help the help desk out when you get to Global Go Live. Now, of course, it's nice to say, okay, this is great. There's all this change management, and this is the journey, and then we get it. But how are we actually going to do this and be successful? So what's really, really nice here is that Google and Google Premier partners, such as Onix, have all the tools that are available to make sure that you are successful when you try to accomplish this journey. Essentially, what we do, from ensuring that we have a project kickoff that includes a change management kickoff and further discovery workshops, as well as communication and training plan templates. They're all ready and they exist, ready to be tailored and introduced to you. Very similarly, Google has an amazing admin guru program where they can actually align admin assistants from Google with your admin assistants in-house to really help them one-on-one understand how they work and to help them figure out how they're going to work in the new system moving forward. Very similarly, we all come to the table with marketing material, media and posters, as well as the Going Google help site. At Onix, we call it our Apps Academy site that hosts all of that training, self-paced training, self-paced videos, as well as communications that some people may miss as we're moving through deployment. And then, of course, Google has the Learning Help Center, which is available as well to ensure that all of you are successful as you move through this journey. So now that I've spoken about the people side of change, which is a huge piece of this, now we're going to chat a little bit about the process side of change. And I really, truly enjoy the process side of change because this is really where you get to see the tool set come to life, if you will. It's really very important, and I discussed this earlier, about having a vision for your organization and really setting a vision for how much you culturally want to change. What does the organization culturally want to achieve? And we've worked with numerous clients over the years, and essentially most of the responses that we get kind of boil up to these 3 points that you see on the screen. The first would be speed. A lot of our clients are really looking to have their brightest talent across the organization come to decisions a lot faster. They really want to make sure that from an operational standpoint, they're getting to market faster. And then very similarly, responsiveness. We are just in a world and an economy where everything is moving almost at the speed of light. And to keep up within your industry or your market, you really want to make sure that you have the tools that allow you to get there quickest. Very similarly, in speaking to a lot of my clients over the years, particularly ones that are in the manufacturing, retail, as well as advertising industries, everything is about invention. It's about creating. It's about innovating. It's about getting to market faster. It's about coming up with that new big idea so that everyone can stay ahead of their own industry, regardless of what that may be. And so using the Google tools, a lot of our customers say, it's just helped us get our best talent together and allow them to actually create and innovate and lead in the space so that we're the leading partners in our industry. And then the third one that I hear actually most commonly would be the sharing aspect of the G Suite tools. There are a lot of cultures within the retail space, within the manufacturing space right now, just companies in general where the departments are very siloed. And it's not that they mean for it to be that way, but it just is. Also, there are a lot of companies that will be purchasing subsidiary companies. And so once again, you're coming into now this umbrella folder, but there's no means of really transferring knowledge or communicating efficiently across the different groups. And so what we find and we hear a lot of is that the sharing aspect of the G Suite tools really helps a lot of our clients kind of come to this decision. They want to be able to transfer knowledge within the company more efficiently. They want to be able to communicate more effectively, and they really want to just be able to share and collaborate in a different way. Now, all of this to say, when you think about getting to market faster or moving more, communicating in a more efficient way or innovating, you're really targeting core behavioral changes in how we work. Essentially, the way that we think about work today is changing. And G Suite is one of those tools that really helps companies to target that core behavioral change that needs to happen. So for example, instead of picking up a phone and having a meeting over the phone like we used to, now you can actually use Meet video conferencing. And you can actually be face-to-face with a person, chatting, sharing your screen, presenting, and coming to decisions a lot faster. Very similarly, collaborating on documents. In the previous world, I would work on a document, I would email it to Kaitlin, Kaitlin would then make her edit, she would email it back to me, and all of that takes a lot of time. Now, of course, the new behavioral change would be that we're creating a document, we're sharing it with those that we need to collaborate with, and we're working on it in real time. And then very similarly, just being able, the fact that we're able to share and use this platform on any device from anywhere. I could be working with colleagues over in Hong Kong, I could be working with colleagues that are in different time zones to me, and we can all be putting our input in and all having our say at the exact same time. So it's really about targeting the core behavioral changes within the organization, which is why the process side of the change is actually very important. Now, transformation really requires deliberate investment. And I will say that again, transformation requires deliberate investment over time. All of this to say, when we used to do these projects before, we would do the people side of change. The technology is changing. We know that we have to communicate and train to our people and to our employees, and we would do that. And then by the time you got to your global go live, everything would the adoption of the product tools would really go into this steady state, if you will. And essentially, what we then decided to do was, okay, well, if for whatever reason that we're not seeing a greater rise in adoption, essentially what we wanted to do is think about, okay, we've taught the people how to use the tool set. Now it's a new tool set, they know how to use it, but how are they applying that to their business process? How are they applying that to the way that they're working today? How are we ensuring that they're using the tools to actually make their jobs more efficient and to get things done faster? And so that's really where you see a lot of this larger curve to the top is really about applying the process piece and focusing that change management to ensure that business processes, workflows, your use cases, things that you do every day, we're now showing you how the tool can help do that more efficiently, faster, quicker, with more collaboration with your colleagues. Now, the way that we actually execute this at Google and at Onix are our transformation labs. And I will say that over the years, I've really enjoyed performing a lot of these labs myself. Transformation labs are really a 3 to 4 hour workshop that we do with our clientele. Essentially, they can be tailored to suit. And we really put them through these 3 different phases that you see on the screen. The first part of the lab is an inspire phase. We really want to make sure that our clients are understanding what others are doing along the industry trend or along the same department line, and how they're using the G Suite tools to improve the way that they're working, improving their processes, their business workflows, etc. And so we really use that opportunity to show them the power of the tools and what other people in the space are doing. But then what we do is that because these workshops are very collaborative, and we really put them through exercises, we allow them then to discover their own use cases. So we give them an opportunity in the lab to actually brainstorm and think about what are some of their workflows and their use cases and business processes that are ripe for improvement, potential redesigning, reinventing. Maybe we've just done something because we always did it that way. But now there's an opportunity for us to say, oh, we actually have a new tool set and we could probably think about this in a different way. So we allow them to discover what those use cases will be. And then very similarly, with prototyping, we then allow them to come together, think about the solutions, and actually begin to prototype what those business processes are going to be. So essentially, it allows them and empowers the end user to really think about, okay, now I have this process, now we actually have a tool set where I can do it differently, let's think about redesigning it. And then we can actually allow them to test it and then put it into production. And of course, we don't want to forget that we do want to measure and monitor our impact, okay? When we're doing these type of projects from the people side and the process side of change, we do want to make sure that we are measuring and monitoring our impact, and we do this in 3 different ways. We want to make sure that we are measuring the adoption, so are we using the tools that we've been given? And we also want to figure out how well are we using those tools, right? So the actual collaborative portion of that. And then the third thing that we want to make sure that we're measuring is the impact. How are we impacting and affecting our people and our business? So the way that we actually measure both adoption and collaboration would be that we want to make sure that we are measuring the product usage. You can do that using a G Suite Insights tool, or you can use that using the admin console reports as well. And then for our impact portion of it, we really want to make sure that you're sending surveys out to your organization. I know that Google has a fantastic one called the G Suite Impact Survey, and that really lets you know how you're affecting your people and the business and allows you to really tweak your change management strategy to suit.
Excellent. Thank you, Solange.
Thank you, Kaitlin.
Very well said. So on the technical side, I think this might be the more obvious one for many of you as you're thinking about the migration to G Suite. What you could expect very briefly is that the partner that's involved in the migration, like Onix and Google Cloud, would actually take care of the many things that you see here on the list around technology for you during the course of your migration. We also would go back to the 3 core phases that Solange so nicely walked us through here earlier in the presentation. And inevitably, what we would see over time is that we would be building upon the early success and the early work that we would be doing to introduce the technology first during core IT in our first phase of implementation, then in the second phase to early adopters, which would be 5 to 10% of the organization, and then finally in the global go live. Now, this might seem different or contrary to what you've experienced in other technology implementations where you phase it out over many different rollouts and waves. But inevitably, what we find is that the less time that we can have in coexistence between a former communication tool set and G Suite, the better off that change experience is for the workforce. So we want to be mindful of that as we're staging our plan. And this has been proven out over many implementations to help us do just that. But really the secret sauce to all of this is the combination of roles that you see up here on the slide. We have Google that will be involved from more of an advisory capacity. We have the absolutely critical role that the partner plays in this journey. And I think you can hear from the experience that Solange had shared with us why their role is so critical in the implementation process that we do around G Suite. And then finally, last but certainly not least, the customer and the ownership of the project and having that sponsorship and that long-term commitment to making this change and having that deliberate investment, as Solange had said, in truly transforming their organization. So in closing, we wanted to leave you with a few things to remember. When you think about timing, engage users early and often. When you think about prototyping and iterating, do that as soon as possible. From a measurement standpoint, be data-driven. Make decisions and measure adoption along the way. And demonstrate the value of new ways of working to the end users.
And in regards to targeting, really remember that you need to focus on your business users and the solutions, rather than just strictly IT goals. You really want to make sure that you're establishing those champions, whether it be your stakeholders or that Google Guide community, and really empower teams to find their own ways to transform. Very similarly, you want to make sure that you're setting that transformation vision with the business and communicating it very often. Ensure that leaders are committed to transformation and lead by example.
Thank you for tuning in today to Make It Work, Collaborate, Innovate, and Transform. Stay tuned for more Google Cloud content from Google Cloud experts, other industry experts, and customers. If you're more interested in today's topic, please click on the resources video link below the watch window. Solange, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Kaitlin.
Our pleasure. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys.